Good morning, everybody. My name is Chris Thomas. I am one of the board of directors with the Talent Pool Society based here in Western Canada. I wanted to thank all of you for taking part in today's event. We will have some exciting speakers today to tell you all about the different ways of looking at work versus the sort of full-time permanent, applying directly to an employer type of situation. What you're going to be hearing from are four experts in the field from four totally different organizations, some very large organizations that are worldwide, some that are smaller boutique type of recruitment agencies, and others that are doing it as independents. So you're going to be hearing some different points of view, some different ideas, and some different concepts. What we're going to hope is that you're going to learn something today that's going to help you with your search as you move forward. As you know, if you've been at these events before, we're going to be moderated by Lynn Berry, and she's going to come on in a couple of seconds and introduce the panel and get us all going today. But I did want to take some time to thank all of you for taking part, thank our panelists for taking part today, Ahmed, Saba, Debbie, and Nandor, and wanted to thank all of you for help and support with this type of event. We've also got something extra special that's going to be coming up next week. And I did want to apologize right off the bat. It's not going to be available for everybody, but it is going to be available for some individuals as we move forward. The reason why it's not available for everybody is I don't want to stress and take up more of our panelists' time next week. But they've all graciously agreed to help with the event next week as well. And you guys will hear more about it by the end of today's session. So with that, wanted to thank you once again on behalf of the Talent Pool and the Board of Directors with the Talent Pool. And thank all of you for taking part. With that, I'm going to flip it over to Lynn Berry, our moderator.
Good morning. I just want to warn you, I am having some technical difficulties. Every once in a while, my screen is freezing. So if I go into freeze mode, I will refresh and start again. I think maybe it's just everybody's on their internet trying to figure out what's happening down south. I don't know. But I am so happy to be here, and I'm so happy that you've joined us. This is one of my favorite things, having an HR panel, having them be able to answer questions and share information. And these recruiters are all very experienced, and so let's get started by introducing them. So our first individual, when I was researching Nandor Fodor, I came up with a gentleman who was a parapsychologist, a ghost hunter. And I was thinking, and he's from Hungary, and I thought, oh my goodness, is that what you do? But then I looked at his birth date, and it was 1895. So I thought, oh, wrong guy. But Nandor did, in fact, immigrate from Hungary 6 years ago. And I am drinking my water from a Budapest Starbucks glass. And I just want to say, I think that he has great time management skills, because I noticed that when he was going to school, he was also participating in a lot of different clubs. He was working part-time, and I think he's carried that over into his work world. When he first came, I think he attended CCIS, and what he's doing now is giving back to community, because he is sharing his experience and knowledge with others throughout the city to help them learn Canadian workplace culture. I think he's a really great role model for new immigrants. And on a personal note, he speaks 3 languages, he loves music, and he is a brand new dad. He has a little one already, but he is a brand new dad. Just had a baby on Monday. So congratulations, and thank you especially for, it's so tiring. Thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thank you, Lynn. Appreciate it. It's great to be here.
We look forward to chatting with you. Okay, so our second speaker, oh my goodness, I don't know what to say about this fantastic human. Debbie has volunteered at my events for many years, and she's generous, she's funny, she's knowledgeable. Some might even describe her as a straight shooter. If you want to know exactly what's happening, you talk to Debbie, and she doesn't sugarcoat it. She helped my daughter actually get her resume through the system at Suncor. And although my daughter, she got the job on her own because she had a great interview, I don't know that she would have been successful without Debbie's help. So I owe her a debt of gratitude. I didn't have to pay for my daughter anymore. She could pay her on her own. But Debbie's well known as a bell ringer in the circles of the HR circle. And I'm not sure if she still does that out of her home, but she used to ring a bell when she placed a person. Debbie's also
it's actually a gong.
A gong. Oh, a gong, not a bell. That's even better. Okay. And Debbie is a foster caregiver and is presently involved in organizing a toy drive for the renovation of 6 foster parent visitation rooms throughout Calgary. So she did post that on her LinkedIn, and if anybody has toys, there you go. Okay. Thank you, Debbie. I look forward to hearing your input.
Thank you so much.
Okay. When I was doing a little research about Ahmed, the one thing that was apparent was he's really good at his job. He's held 5 different positions at Manpower, meaning he did such a good job in each position that he was promoted. He is also an entrepreneur with wonderful time management skills since he was involved in the restaurant business while working full-time in the HR field. That's pretty impressive. I also discovered he's a TV personality. I've seen him on several shows, sharing information about the employment outlook with the public. By the way, I saw on LinkedIn that he's looking to add multiple recruiters and administrative support staff to his team. So, hey, thank you so much for being here. Very happy to have you.
Thank you, everyone. Happy to be here.
Okay, so our last presenter, Sabah, is a wonderful example of adaptability in order to recreate oneself. She began her career journey in a different country with a different education focus, dentistry. Immigrating to Canada, she actually discovered or created a new niche for herself. She's rapidly progressed through a variety of jobs at Randstad, proving she has great skill and a strong work ethic. She also speaks 4 languages, so I'm feeling very intimidated with my one language. And looking through her LinkedIn, one can say that Sarah's a very strong community member. She's also spoken at my events previously. She does a lot of volunteer work. And I read this observation she made, and I'm gonna read it word for word. Fundamental changes have impacted our social and business lives since the pandemic. But focusing on the silver lining, this situation has groomed our resiliency, adaptability, and definitely taught us new perspectives. This is so true, and I really thank you for that. I think it's something that we all need to remind ourselves. There's always something good that comes out of this. Thank you. Okay, I'm so looking forward to this. So let's get to our first question. Now, for those of you who are on, you will see that there is a box. Forward them on to me so that we are able to make sure that you get your questions answered. Okay, so let's start with, can you recall the last role you filled and how you found your candidate? I think this is a really great question to start with. So may we start with Debbie? Oh, Debbie, I think you're on mute. Nope, there we go.
Nope. Can
Nope,
you hear me now?
You're good. Yep.
Okay, good. So I wanted to thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on this panel with such big names, and so thank you first of all for having me. I am a boutique firm, so but I can speak to the last person that I placed is with a oil and gas company. Our boutique firms we're usually come to when the companies have tried to fill the role themselves and couldn't because they were looking for a specific skill set. So I don't actually post my roles. You can go to my website. I do have a really nice website, but I don't post roles there. my thought process has always been that my client more traction from posting the role than my little website ever would. So what I do is a technique that I learned from my dad, and it's mapping. So when I got the role, the first thing I do is I look at my client and who all their competitors are, and roughly around the same size. And then I map out who in those companies is doing the role, and then I approach them. Um, it takes me on average about 100 cold calls to get a hire. And on that role, I was right around the 100 mark. I presented my candidates. I had what I consider 3 really strong candidates to put forward. And of those 3, the person that ended up getting the role actually knew the hiring manager. So that they hadn't worked together before, but where they had met was at an industry event. And so that gives you an idea too of the importance of going to those industry events for the area that you're working in, because what it did for the hiring manager is it decreased the risk for him to make the hire, because he felt like he had already known her from these events.
Good advice. Thank you. Okay, Saba.
Well, first of all, I would like to say thank you again for inviting me, and I love this opportunity to speak to all of you and to also the keen job seekers here. So the last job that I have filled was just this week, and it was for a tiles manufacturing organization. And, it relates back to your note on my community partnership, as we partner in Randstad with SAIT. And we partner with their AIM program. So we meet with their top graduates every year. And one of the successful candidates for the position was actually one of the graduate students. So very much different from what Debbie was saying. With the way that I present candidates to the employers, it is more on, I have a talent pool ready. And same thing, we map their skills, their qualification, their experience. So the butter here is that when an employer asks for the right candidate, it's always the top 3, which is the creme of the creme. And that successful student was, blew it out of the park, and she met all of the checkpoints, and she met the skills and the qualification, and she did really well and very impressive during the interview. That it was a note specifically mentioned by the hiring manager. She was taking notes. And that was one of the skills required for the role, as they work with inventory, with category of, the tiles and the shipments that come in. And he mentioned that it was so hard to make a decision between all the 3 skilled candidates. But just for her to be taking notes during the interview, he knew that she's having that top quality that will be necessary for the role.
Oh my goodness, another great hint. Thank you. Okay, Nador, what do you have you hired?
Yeah. So this just happened recently, right before the holiday season kicked in. I had a quick turnaround interview with one of our remote candidates out of Vancouver, and she scored a contract through us with one of our San Francisco-based clients. We've been focusing on these remote IT roles in the past 4 or 5 years now. And so she's what you would call an Elixir developer. For those of you who don't know, I specialize in IT. So my opinion will be a little bit different. I only do software development and IT-related management consulting roles, PM, BA, change management type of roles. But long story short, what they were looking for is that humble, hungry, smart type personality who's capable of sitting down with Scrum teams and do solutioning sessions. So it's an open discussion where you bounce ideas off of technical teams and you're able to facilitate the conversation. Now, if there are technical people on the call, you might know that those soft skills when it comes to a software engineer might not be the top skills that you have. But if you're technically really good and you have a decent facilitation skill to these kind of meetings, I think you provide that added plus in that realm that would get you hired. And so what methodology we followed, we use Teamit, essentially. That's our US-based platform where we build high-performing teams that used to work together, deliver projects together, so therefore they don't reinvent the wheel. And essentially, they would like to work together again. So if we can, we just bring them on as a team instead of individual placements. And so this is how we found our candidate in Vancouver. We had a partnership with Lighthouse Labs where she taught a couple classes, including Ruby on Rails, and she got into Elixir. So having said that, the 2 interviews took place just before the holidays kicked in, and she started on January 4th. So really interesting story because it just happened so quick, and everything is remote. She's working from home remotely, and there's no anticipation that she would need to move down there, still working for a US client. So I think that's kind of a win-win story.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Ahmed, you're back. I am having technical problems. It looks like you are having some technical problems. Could you share your last hire?
Yeah, definitely. Once again, thanks for having me, everyone. I work with Manpower. We definitely do full scopes. We do a little bit of every kind of vertical. Usually Q1 is relatively slower for us, but I won a big project at the end of the year of 2020, and we have hit the ground running with a project where externally we're hiring thousands of positions across Alberta, and internally I created a project team. So the last role I filled was actually creating a 54-person project team internally with project managers, recruiters, and admin staff. So the last 2 weeks have been busy with that. As you mentioned, I had that ad up on LinkedIn. I use social media for everything. I've never posted an ad. I use my personal network and my social media to get any role, whether it's junior or senior. I'm big on the social media bandwagon. So I utilize Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, all those things. And with my network, it definitely helps. So that's kind of the short answer.
Okay. May I ask what type of positions do you fill? So we heard that Nandor fills IT. What kind of positions do you fill?
So I'm the operations leader, so I don't do much filling anymore as much as I used to. But with Manpower, I oversee the whole operations. We have many verticals. We have office admin, clerical. We have industrial, construction, warehousing. And then we have our professional division, which is IT, engineering, finance, accounting. And we also have a healthcare division as well. So those are kind of the 6 or 7 different verticals we do, just in Alberta.
So very broad. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Saba Randstad, what kind of positions do you fill?
Very much similar to what Ahmed said. And we are, like Chris mentioned, international. So we are in 39 countries. And Randstad has been around. We just celebrated our 60th anniversary in September 2020. We are nationwide. So Randstad Canada operates almost in every city and province. And speaking of Alberta and let's say Calgary, I look after the administration and business services. So anything to do with data entry, customer service, admin, executive assistant, junior HR, marketing, sales, etc. And then we have dedicated and specialized teams who look after engineering, technologies, warehouse and light industrial, finance and accounting, skilled trades. So basically about 6 or 7 functions. So what we say Randstad is a one-stop shop.
Ah, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Debbie, you do critical talent. So
well, I've always been known in the city to do engineers, geologists, and geophysicists in oil and gas. But if I would have stuck to that, I would have gone out of business. So I've pivoted, and it's amazing. I was doing a ton of work in manufacturing, up until last year, and then I switched and was doing a lot of work in transportation, and more recently, I've been my clients have come to me for the technology roles.
Okay, thank you. Okay, I'd like to ask each of you, what is the benefit of working with a recruiting firm, and is there a cost involved? Let's just get down to basics. So we have Ahmad back, so maybe I'll ask you while you're with us. Ahmad, what is the benefit of working with a recruiting agency, and is there a cost involved for job seekers?
Yeah, definitely. So is there a cost involved? There's absolutely zero cost involved for job seekers. There's no obligation involved. We are just an additional free resource to kind of help network your profile out to different companies and employers we deal with. The biggest benefit, like I said, is the network, the reach. We have a lot of candidates that come to us with no experience, no skill sets, whatever the case may be, looking to transition to a new skill set. We can provide assistance in obviously getting their profile out to a different network that they aren't even aware of. And additionally, the biggest thing at Manpower, this is mostly I'm speaking for myself, is we have a lot of workforce development programs. Right now, just so everyone's aware, in Canada, 50% of employers, so one out of every 2 employers has a hard time filling their open job requirements. And the biggest reason is lack of applicants with applicable skill sets. So we've actually created programs in-house to help upskill individuals at no cost. So through government funding and other avenues, we've actually created 10 or 12 different programs across Alberta, some that are related to IT and tech, some that are related to skilled trades, some to supply chain, and a few other ones. There's about 10 or 12 we've created, but the biggest benefit is understanding what the job seeker's skill set is, what are the in-demand skill sets in the market, and then from that, helping them tailor their resume, their profile, and all that good stuff. So the biggest benefit by far is the network, the reach, and also helping them understand what the in-demand skill sets are and helping them get the skill sets for those in-demand jobs.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to share what you see the benefit of working with your organization is?
If that's okay, I'd like to take a run at this as well. So, particularly, I'm working for 2 entities. Agile Recruiting is the Canadian side of our business, and Teamit is the remote US-based business. Benefit of working with Teamit is that we're exclusive with all those US clients that are looking to build virtual teams in Canada. So all the positions that are coming down through that pipeline is fully remote work from home IT roles, and there are no other agencies working on those in Canada, as to my knowledge. Working with Agile Recruiting, it's a little bit of a different ball game. As we all know, staffing can be quite competitive. But long story short, I like to think about both businesses as accelerators. Like you need to know about positions even before they open up, right? You need to have those job descriptions in place, those connections, knowing the management, and have your candidates ready by the time they actually open up the position, so you know to get them in before anybody else. So that's one of the details. Answering the other question, it's absolutely free. As we all know, in Canada, candidates are not paying for staffing services. It's usually a client cost kind of model. So upon placement, the clients will pay us our fees that we proactively agree upon and lock in a master service agreement. So for candidates, it's absolutely free of charge. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you.
I would like to add something, Lynn. It's Debbie.
Yeah.
The other thing is that we get a lot of roles that aren't actually on the client's website. So they, like, especially if they're contract positions. So how a lot of companies run now are the contract roles are run through procurement. They're not even run through HR. And so they're not, people in procurement aren't, or supply chain, they're not recruiters. So they don't even try to fill those roles. They immediately send them out to whoever's they're using. And so for the job seekers, what that looks like is being able to identify if I'm interested in a, job at XYZ company, that which recruitment firms do they use to fill their roles? And that's actually really difficult, because I think a lot of the companies aren't allowed to say, oh, we have the contract with that company either. But being able to put the list together of which companies are dealing with which third-party recruitment firms are paired with which organizations, so that that's where you need to go to find those contract roles. Does that make sense?
Yes, and that actually answers one of the questions we had from the audience about how do you find about the hidden job market. And so you're saying the more recruitment firms you're attached to, the greater chance of getting entry into this hidden job market.
Well, yeah, because they wouldn't have those contract roles on their website.
Right.
You have to go to the agency. And if you, like, I used to work at Suncor, and I know for a fact, like, I don't know what it was like, almost every single role we had never started as a perm role, because it took so long to get approval for organizations is to actually start with the contract, and then it will progress to a permanent position.
That was certainly true with my daughter when she worked at Suncor. Lots of the people who came on after her were, in fact, through an agency. Saba,
Sorry, Lynn, you were disconnected a bit here. I didn't hear you.
Sorry, do you have anything to add?
Absolutely. So I second with all of our guests here. It is the network, it is the hidden market, and also in a saturated market. How many applications do you think a posting will be getting on Indeed? So what I always encourage, our candidates and our talent is that get connected with as many recruitment firms as you can. This is just an additional support that we are providing you, but you're still having the responsibility to continue with your job search, whether you're using the online search engines, whether you're using information meetings and networking, but this is just like an additional tool here. And also with Randstad being international. So let's say you are our candidate here in Calgary, but things happen and you have moved up to another province. Your profile is still active. The other recruiters can still access it. Your references are already contacted, so you don't have to repeat the whole process again. So that's one of the advantages of specifically working with Randstad. But in general, it is about, even employers, they don't want to go through, like, let's say, hundreds of resumes. So this is where our role comes in vetting the candidates, in referencing them, in doing the test skills. And so when we present the top 3, I usually say, don't send me a cover letter, because I am your cover letter to the employer. I am the one who have met with you. I know what are your strengths, what you're looking for, because it's all about the fit. I can see similar skills on different resumes, but me knowing Lynn and knowing Nandor and know what they can differentiate and bring and add value to the role and to the company, that's where the additional benefit comes in. And yes, again, it is, of course, out of no cost to the job seekers.
Thank you. Thank you. I have a question. Can a job seeker apply for a job on the website, but also have their application on?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sorry, Lynn?
Pardon me?
We didn't
No one heard
hear
the
you
question,
properly,
Lynn.
Lynn. Can you repeat that?
Sorry, my technology. I'm asking, can someone apply for a job through a company website as a job opening, but also have you forward their, or have it 2 or 3 recruiters forward their application to the employer? Or do you have to kind of stick with one venue or one avenue to get that job?
I can go first. With us, we do whatever works best for the job seeker. So we have a website where people can apply directly through the postings that goes into a centralized inbox. As well, we'll have the direct recruiter's name and number, or email and number. Sometimes there is no number, it's just an email, just because numbers get flooded sometimes. But ideally, we try to make every avenue open because we want to tailor it to the applicant. So whoever the job seeker is, what avenue they want to go through, we try to tailor it to the job seeker's most efficient avenue, whether that's text, email, to the website, call, whatever that case may be.
Okay, thank you. Would anyone else like to respond?
I'd like to respond. I can't stand it when people do that, when they apply, and in fact, like, it just creates all kinds of problems, because if they have more than one agency working the role, then the agency has to have to figure out who they apply to first, so that that agency gets credit for it. And it depends on your relationship with your clients. There's some clients that'll say, "Oh, this person applied directly to us, and so we're not accepting your submittal, and we have no chance to present the case and highlight the candidate's background. They will just get whatever was online." And the other thing is that I think, I this has actually backfired on a few people that I know. So that on one case that I can think of in particular, I had sent the posting to the person. I approached them. Then they went and applied directly online, and the client said, "Oh, we have this person." And I said, "Oh, I actually sent them the profile and told them that you were my client." And it upset the client so much that they actually wouldn't consider the person at all, because they weren't following the rules. They weren't doing the right thing. And I think it speaks to your integrity and all those other kinds of things. So, but I get it too from the job seeker's point of view, because you have the agencies that are all out there fighting for business, and there's some that are not truthful, will say, we have a relationship with this client and can present you, when they actually don't. So, it's really hard for the job seekers to know which of the agencies are telling the truth and actually do have these contracts and are able to submit candidates on those particular jobs. But I prefer if they.
I really like
Sorry?
your point in saying that. Sorry, I just wanted to add on your feedback. I really like the point when you said, like, they don't understand the process behind it and how does that work. Because, usually one thing that I observed, if it's a highly competitive account, then everybody has the actual client ID for that job. So when they make someone write a right to represent template, because that's now usually part of the process to have a timestamp when that candidate gave you their approval, it usually reflects that exact job. So if a candidate goes around that, knowing that you should not be doing that, and it's kind of a reputation issue, really, that we're running into. And I often tell my candidates, it's okay if you decide to go with someone else, as long as you tell me, so we don't double submit you. Because I understand, even with agencies, you might have a relationship already with Randstad, you might have a relationship with Eagle, whatever, right? As long as we know that we're not burning any bridges, because it reflects bad on you as a candidate, it reflects bad on us as an agency. And truthfully, transparency is just always the best way, in my opinion. So that definitely is a good point. And secondly, candidates probably are not aware, how that process works. Let's say if it's a vendor management systems account, because I think that's when the majority of these issues occur. But when you have exclusivity, it's a little bit of a different thing, because you have a piece of paper saying that, nobody else is working those roles, right? So I think it's important to educate them at the beginning of the process so they get the lay of the land and know, okay, do I have any other channels to get my name in there for this one, or you're my only shot at this? And don't just work with me because I'm your only shot, work with me because you like working with us. So essentially, it's always a transparent conversation. You just need to know what's a goal for you and what's a deal breaker for you, right? So I think that transparency just plays throughout that whole process and the hand holding throughout the interviews as well.
You guys are just referring to permanent, though. There's contract and permanent. There's a difference between contingent, temporary contracts and permanent, right? So I think that's where the difference comes in and that's where you talk about transparency. But I think, sorry, Sab, I cut you off there.
No,
But
it's all good.
but yeah, I think that's where the partnership. This is a relationship, a partnership between clients and between job seekers. So I think it's important for us as the middle person of this relationship partnership to be very transparent with both sides and build those relationships with the candidates, job seekers, and the employers. And like I said, you guys are referring to just permanent hires, but there's a bunch of different avenues the candidates can go through. So I think there's more to it. But ultimately, I always think we want to delight the job seeker is the ultimate piece of this whole puzzle for us. So I think you have to make sure you delight the customer, which is the employer, and also delight the job seeker, the candidate.
Thank
So
you.
So
just
work
to
around
build
what
up
they
on that,
want.
I was actually referring to contract as well, especially in high turnover accounts like
Yeah.
Enbridge or if you name Suncor, because like from our side, when you get those roles and you have that vendor call, maybe they have a top 5, 6 tier vendors, right? Like essentially, you know your competitors on that on take call. So that's the transparency I'm giving to my candidate. Look, we're not the only one working on this. Have you been called already by someone else? Because I need to know. And if you already gave them your permission to present you, then I'm really thankful for your time. We unfortunately can't work together. Let's do this another time. I'll touch base with you a few months down the road once you finish, right? So essentially, I think it's not just perm. Permanent is actually, I think, less of a problematic situation because, in my opinion, it takes longer cycle times to find the right personality and skill combination. Contract is definitely a speed game, I found, just like in terms of having a short list of 3 qualified candidates who are the right fit, could do the job within 24 to 48 hours. So definitely that's when I think that right to represent piece gets a bit more problematic because you know you're competing against all these other agencies.
Thank you.
Absolutely, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for you from the audience. Is it harder to place mature candidates these days, and what can help them be kind of the chosen one? So may we start with Saba?
I got that question actually yesterday from one of my candidates, and she was telling me that, I'm a little bit more mature, so how hard is it for me to get a job? And I was like, I don't think this is going to be a challenge at all. I see it from a positive point that you're coming with a lot more experience and a lot more skills. I'll say the thing that has been always a challenge in the job market itself. It's the technology, it's how tech savvy, how up to date you are with the skills necessary for the position or for your career. So, Microsoft Office is always revamping. There's a lot of different tools. We're hearing about like Microsoft Dynamics 365 or, certain ERP tools. So it's really, if you know that your role will need to know certain specific skills, I would say staying up to date, brushing up on those skills, and just expanding your portfolio. Certain jobs might need some more physical involvement that comes with it, but overall, and I'm speaking from an administrative perspective, I think it's how tech savvy you are and how you're up to date with what your industry needs. That all it matters.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Well, I recruit usually senior technical roles. So, I mean, the more gray hair you have, the better for me. But that's my industry. And my dad always told me to take. My dad was in the industry too, and he always told me to take pride in my gray hair. And I've never dyed it because we like the experience. That being said, I know people that have spent their entire career researching this, and I understand that it can be a problem. But there was a fella that I listened to. This is years ago. He's from the States, and he built his whole business on going into call centers to tell them how to improve their recruiting of people for their call centers. And he said it was the same formula that he used over and over again, and it was to get a mature workforce. He said the more mature your workforce is, the better chance you have of them staying. They don't bounce around as much as the younger workforce. And so for any call centers, he always actually recommended that they actually look for the more mature workers. So I think for myself, I always say, like, there will be industries and jobs that are looking for younger folks out there. Absolutely. That's not where you should be poking around. You should be focused on where people find value, what you're bringing to the table. And there are a ton of organizations out there that do value that.
So true. And, I can only second that. I'm a firm believer that everybody has a home somewhere. And when we profile candidates for our clients, I believe we just as much profile clients for our candidates, because there's no way on earth that everybody is a fit for every role or every organization or environment. In my opinion, when we use the term mature, it's kind of a diplomatic way of saying, is there any age discrimination in the hiring process? But having said that, I just found once you hit that mark, that even the question occurs in your mind, probably you should start looking at contracting, though. Because one thing I found, especially when it comes to project-based work, it matters more if you can get that done. Can you be trusted with this so you can run this process on your own, right? And it's less so about, the ageism that we kind of talk about, right? So my advice is, if you run into that roadblock to secure employment, then probably you should focus a little bit more on the contracting side of things, if that's an option for you.
Okay. Certainly we all earn our gray hair. So I think that that's something, focusing on experience rather than being old. Thank you. Okay, so another question is, how could job seekers build an effective relationship with recruiters? What would convince you to accept a stranger's request to connect for future collaboration? So I guess we're talking about also through LinkedIn. Do you accept everyone's invitation? How do we build a relationship so you know who I am when these job openings come up?
I can start. We were all job seekers once, and we've been through the experience. And I speak from my personal experience. Information meetings were always effective in my journey, especially when coming, new to Calgary and build that career path and experience here. So yes, personally, I always connect with, it's not strangers, it's keen job seekers who, connect on LinkedIn. I do like to say and emphasize that I would appreciate when somebody puts in a note and put in that effort in the request rather than just clicking on the invite. And it's also it is the language that we use. We understand as recruiters, when somebody is talking to us, eventually the ultimate goal is help us to find a job. It is actually the approach. It is the language used. It is how do we support them? Because absolutely, I might not be able to find you a job myself, but there is a ripple effect. I can connect you with other professionals in my community or in the industry who can support you. So I think what I would say to the job seekers is utilize that free service, right? And learn about it. So if you are an accountant and you connect with another accountant in the field, not only that they can get you a job, but actually learn about what's going on in that industry and what can help them and what can, what is the challenge that is coming up. So I think it is a great platform and an opportunity to learn and to find their path in the industry. But also, personally, I welcome any new requests, and it is so rewarding to support and help others and coach them through the right way, even if I personally cannot find them the job, but I will do my best.
Thank you. And just a tip for job seekers, when you go on LinkedIn, go on the person's profile and click connect, and it will come up, would you like to personalize your invitation? And that's where you actually put in, why do you want to connect, or how are you connected? And so that does make a difference. And for me, that makes a huge difference too. Does anyone else want
And
to talk about how to build a relationship?
yeah, just have a few points to add in terms of adding notes. I like to think of recruitment as a relationship kind of networking ball game, right? So when you send a note to someone, just make sure to do some research on them, because I think the most common issue that we all run into, yeah, I would very much like to help everybody find their home, right? But essentially, I'm like a really small piece of that big pie that we call recruitment. So if somebody is looking for HR jobs, unfortunately, I am not the person to turn to. I am happy to have what you used to call a coffee meeting pre-COVID, maybe now virtual coffee, but I won't be in a position to actually offer you something tangible as a job right now, right? But essentially, that's first thing, like know your audience when you custom tailor that message. Second thing, if I have someone that I worked with that you know who pointed you to my direction, I want to hear who was that so I can thank them. It's essentially a great way to utilize that, I want to say, relationship capital that we all work with. Because if I know, oh yeah, I placed this guy, 2 months back, he was incredible in the interview, I kind of already get a sense of quality because he sent you my way, right? So think about it as a virtual networking protocol kind of concept. And if you have someone that can connect us, make sure to refer them in that email as well, so I know where's that message coming from.
Thank you. Ahmed, may I ask, how often should job seekers follow up with recruiters? And is there a better way? Should they phone? Should they send emails? What do you think?
So I think that's all discussed. It's a case by case basis with each
Mm,
person. Some people prefer text, some people prefer calls, prefer email. I think it depends on the likelihood you can actually place that position. And it's something that you as the recruiter and the job seeker discuss, whether it's weekly, bi-weekly, monthly,
okay.
quarterly. There's no real answer, and I don't think anyone can give an exact answer of what they prefer. It depends on the market, what's out there, what their skill sets are, what they're looking for. There's so many variables at play where it's impossible to give a one answer to all. That's what my approach is, at least. Every job seeker I speak with, every employer I speak with, every whoever I'm speaking with, I always, before I end any conversation, it's always, what's the next steps, what's the follow up. As a job seeker, there's a lot of responsibility on your part. It's hard, it's real. Ideally, you want to reach out to every single person every single week and get them a job. But in reality, we talk to hundreds of people daily, where it's not,
Right.
we're not going to keep everyone top of mind. Obviously, the goal in this industry is to keep everyone delighted, find everybody work, find everybody meaningful work. But it's for me, it's everyone is a case by case basis. But a lot of responsibility has to fall back on the job seeker. There's responsibility on us as well. But that's where you kind of establish those guidelines before you end the call. What's a good follow-up step? What's the next steps? That's how I do with all of my candidates, job seekers, employers, anyone. It's touch base with them, make a game plan before you finish the conversation, and yeah, establish guidelines for next steps.
So good advice for job seekers. Make sure that it's like at the end of an interview, make sure you understand what the next steps are so that you can take advantage of that. Thank you. What kind of metrics, apart from qualifications, would you use to hire a candidate for any role? That's one of the questions from our participants.
Soft skills, most important thing out there, guys. Soft skills.
And what do those look like? What do you mean by that? How do I show I have soft skills?
That's where you got to build the relationship with the person. You can't show soft skills on a piece of paper. So that's why networking is the biggest piece of advice I give for every single person. Don't, they have a saying in our industry, click and pray. Don't just apply via job boards and whatnot with resumes. Connect, network. Right now you can't physically network, but digital networking is huge through LinkedIn, through social platforms. and utilize those soft skills, critical thinking, problem solving, communication skills, collaboration, teamwork, all these different soft skills that you can't show on a piece of paper are the most important things. So I'm all about emphasizing soft skills in digital networking right now, more than physical networking, but that's my take. I'm very progressive though. I'm not very old school in terms of resumes and applying through that model.
Okay. Does anyone else have anything to say about?
I really agree with Ahmed here.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Nandor. And you know what? And I've been hearing it a lot from employers where they're saying, we are going to be training the skills. We just want to find the right fit. And when we say the right fit, it could be the cultural fit, the environment fit, from an administration perspective, and especially like when we deal with corporate receptionists, communication comes a big deal. So it's really, again, going back to the soft skills, it's the accountability, being open-minded, it's the positive attitude, which I'm going to highlight and write in bold. Positive attitude towards everything, and you can sense that from building those relationships with the candidates. Simple things like punctuality, that eagerness, that's really hunger for finding the role and being flexible and adaptable, and especially in our continuously changing market and with everything that is happening, again, the resiliency. So it comes a lot to the soft skills of the candidates, and employers are willing to put in the efforts and the time and even the money to train, but having the right fit for the role at the beginning, and they will take it from there.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just in addition to those, because we were talking about metrics, like what do they need to be successful with us? I think every industry has their own little tweaks to the process. Because if I'm specifically zoning in an IT, it's all about the reputation, it's all about the quality, it's all about what people know about you out there. So I want to say, just to make it a bit more tangible, soft skills is, of course, a big part in what we do, your passion and drive for what you do and how you achieve those, big milestones. But essentially having awesome references. If you have the VP of engineering saying that you were one of the top of the pick from the team, right? That's already a good benchmark for someone to start working with you. Or again, if someone I worked with referred you and I placed that person, that's another good avenue to follow and track down. Because these are also, like, again, a bit more tangible. Because I understand, like, when we have a client conversation and they say, okay, culture fit, then tell me more about your culture. What does that look like? Do you have a project management office? Is there a lot of administration? Or is this more of a, wild west? You need to be the influencer of things instead of being the one that gets the sign off on the sheet, right? So these are all details that we talk about with clients. And these are all details we pass along to candidates. So then it comes down to that after mentioned transparency. Do you see yourself functioning in that organization? Because I think a lot of people don't realize it's not just you getting the job, it's you holding that job. So yes, it's two different aspects. Once you are past that gate and you're hired, you need to be successful in that role. And the best way is transparency to achieve that.
Thank you. Okay. As a new immigrant without Canadian experience, what are some tips for me to be able to get recognized that I have the experience in my home country and I can do the job here in Canada? Or I might have to even change fields here in Canada because of, the sector maybe I was working at my home country is no longer, with COVID, an option. Any advice for those individuals?
Yeah, I can take a stab at this one first, if you don't mind.
Okay.
One thing I noticed, you got to do tons of research first, because what your job might have been called back home might not be the same title here. So for me, that was the first step. What the heck is an HR analyst, right? Because it's just, a big piece of the pie. Do you do recruitment? Do you do training? Do you do organizational development and so on? And once you know, okay, these types of jobs I could do, then purposefully you can use different kind of platforms to actually build your network in that area. And there are different platforms, meaning volunteering, meaning doing all like online webinars, being part of a professional group of your profession, like for HR people, HRIA, right? But essentially, you can purposefully build towards that goal to score that job and expand your network there. So those were the two first steps to actually just familiarize yourself with the environment. Third thing is actually knowing your worth in the market and how you want to position yourself and your value, because you have to realize you're competing against the local market of professionals that were maybe born and raised and trained here according to similar standards. So one thing I noticed that was really a ball changer, like making sure that your credentials are assessed and there's some sort of equivalency test. I think for maybe WES or IQUAS does that still for equivalency of degrees and education. That definitely is something I would advise to display in the resume, just to make sure how does that measure up against Canadian standards. And so, just a couple things to pivot. You mentioned if they might need to tweak their career. My example would be I was more so in training and education when I got here, and I got back to my roots, what I was doing as an intern at GE recruitment. So essentially, I think it's good that you keep your options open, see what you do really well, and play to your strength. And once you're in that position of power that you don't need a job, you can change potentially if that's what you want to do. But I would advise, first, play to your strength, even if that's not necessarily your long-term career goal. But you really need to be on top of your game, especially during these COVID times. I think working remotely, a lot of remote working skills are now actually things that employers look for. Do you have a home lab? Right. Do you have a little home office, or your kid's going to be running around, right? These kind of things. Because if you're in a client-facing role, all those nitty-gritty details matter.
Thank you. Saba, you have this experience also. Any advice?
I totally agree with Nandor. This is something that I did when my job title was not recognized by recruiters here. And I'm like, what do I have to do? And then the moment that I understood, what is an HR journalist, and then I changed that on the resume, I started to get the calls. So that is something. Of course, tweaking the resume to the Canadian style. Volunteering had helped me personally so much. It was almost like a full-time job for me. I was doing 3 hours in 3 different organizations from 8 to 4, and volunteering strategically and within your field as much as you can, right? It not only gives you that Canadian experience, it builds your network, it builds your confidence in the Canadian market, teaches you certain skills. It adds that local experience to your resume, gives you a local reference too. So there's a lot of advantages that I would definitely bring onto the volunteering. Information meetings, even until today, it just helps me, build my network and helps me understand my industry even more. And I have to say, Calgary is a small city at the end of the day, and everyone knows everyone. It's the way you present yourself and you build that reputation, and that brand will take you to the next steps for sure. First thing I did also was joining the HRIA at that time and attending the events and meeting with other HR professionals. And so it all comes to the network, to the effort we are putting in. And beside all of that, then attending all of the workshops, revamping our skills and applying the consistency. There is no downtime of the year. It's a myth if somebody says don't apply in December or don't apply in summer. It's actually the time where you never know. Less people are applying, so your chances are better. So it's always that continuous effort and time that you put in the process. It pays back. Looking for work is a full-time job. So even for new immigrants, I would say utilize as many platforms as you can. And we have a very strong community that support that. So yeah, and connect also with different immigration and settlement organizations. That has helped me a lot too. Just meeting with different speakers and attending different workshops and learning from different channels. It's like, listen. It's just like your resume. Yes. 10 people will look at it and 10 people will change it for you. So as much as you listen and you network, the better your chances are.
Thank you. Debbie, a question for you. How can people who were in oil and gas transfer and highlight their skills to move into a new area? So you'd mentioned at the beginning that if you'd stayed in oil and gas, you probably wouldn't be eating. Well, you didn't quite say that, but how?
Oh, I think you cut out, but I think I've got the question. I think that's the $1 million question right now. Because what we're seeing, what I'm seeing, is that when I was recruiting in oil and gas for all those years, is they wouldn't look at anybody that didn't have an oil and gas background. And I'm not talking entry level jobs. I'm talking the senior technical. They wanted, and I was in heavy oil. So not only did they want somebody with 5 to 10 years plus experience, they wanted it in the Canadian oil sands. And if you didn't have that, then the odds of getting looked at were not very good at all. And so what we have now is, when I transferred and started working in manufacturing, for instance, I was like, oh, I've got all these pools of all these oil and gas people that I can start slotting in over here. And the funny thing was, is the manufacturing guys didn't want my oil and gas guys. They only wanted people from a manufacturing background. And then when I switched again and pivoted and was working in transportation, it's the same thing now. The transportation folks, they only want people from a transportation background. And so I know that there was and the girl, I shouldn't say girl, lady who was with UBC. She's working here in Calgary now. Her name just escaped me. She's just phenomenal. And she's running some program I saw here in Calgary where she's taking people from the oil and gas industry and uh, skilling them up and putting them in tech, actually. Do you remember
Lisa?
Sash, Sa, Sasha Steenstra or something? Anyways,
Oh,
um,
sorry.
you don't know her? You know her. I'm saying her name wrong. Sasha, I think it is. Anyways, so there's different programs I know that out there to reskill in that area. But I think it goes back to what everyone keeps saying is, if you all of a sudden go, oh, well, now the pipeline's going to be put on hold, so I better pivot and get in on, transportation so hot right now. The best way to do that is to start networking your way in there. And, like, I'm not like maybe the big Randstads of the world, where my clients will come to me and just say, find me somebody who has these great soft skills and we'll train them. That I've never had a job like that. It's always been, these are the skills that we need and the experience we need. And we also want the soft skills. So if they're looking for people with an experience in the transportation industry, the best way is to network in and start talking to those hiring managers in that area, saying, based on my background that you see, what would it take for you to take me seriously as a candidate? Is there a course that I should take, or is there something that you'd like to see me volunteer to do so that I can actually show you how transferable my skills are? Yeah, that's what I would do. The other thing I would do, actually, I want to add one more thing. The other thing I would do is I would start looking at how other people did it. So using LinkedIn as a research tool, you can see people who have skipped into organizations outside their field. And those are great people to talk to and network with, to go, how did you do that? Like, there's a lot of times on my LinkedIn where I'll see so-and-so is now the blah, blah, blah over here. And I'm like, what? They have That is not their background at all. But if I was thinking of doing a similar move, those would be the best people to actually reach out to and go, you have to tell me. I'm so impressed because I want to do the same thing. How did you do that? And get them to tell you their story. People like to tell their story.
Great advice. Does anyone help?
If I may add something.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Please.
Yeah, I was just thinking about two things when it comes to these sector changes. One is obviously the fear factor. What happens if oil and gas picks up? Will you just jump the boat and go back to what you were doing? Because you can make more money, right? And it's interesting because you don't know these motivation factors until you actually interview that person, right? And maybe somebody wanted to get out of oil and gas for about 5 years now, but they've been told that, yeah, you would jump the boat. No, I wouldn't, right? That's one thing. You got to find a way to eliminate that concern somehow, because I'm 100% sure that will come up. Second thing, oftentimes you will hear, I think it's mentioned a lot, transferable skills, but the way you construct the resume is based on your current achievements, which are oil and gas specific. So my advice would be to take a look at that job description that, let's say, a construction kind of company we're posting, and say, okay, maybe it's commercial construction, roofing, whatever. And then look at your current scope. Maybe you were at wellhead site construction, but you can kind of find those similarities in the procurement process, managing the people on site, construction process, health and safety protocols, and rewrite your resume with that mindset. Because they won't care about, your barrel of oil put through kind of achievements or these kind of things. One thing they will care about, though, how is that dotted line transferable to my job and why I should hire you instead of someone else, right? So I think that's just a most commonly made mistake I wanted to share in transferring between industries.
Target. Anyone else? Okay. Well, we hear so much about new jobs, and we've talked about them actually previously in other sessions around AI and clean energy. Do you have any advice on how people might be able to pivot into those areas? Do you do any hiring? It's a question from one of our participants.
Great question. If you don't mind, I will take a stab at AI first. So we do have a lot of data scientists, data analyst, data engineer kind of roles. These are the titles that are most commonly occurred these days. I want to say, traditionally speaking, it used to be called database developer, database administrator, business intelligence developer. Now it seems there's a decline in those roles, and that's where we're going with the AI and machine learning platforms. So one thing that I noticed, like, let's say one of our successful placements who's been coming from geosciences background, data science, as they label it these days, has existed for a long time. Even geophysicists were doing statistical data analysis, finding correlations between large data sets, but they weren't called that way. So, some people might say, oh, data science is like new, maybe 2-3 years old. Well, it could be. But look at that job description thoroughly, and instead of just slapping the title on it, see what they require of you. Because they might say experience in toolkits with R, NumPy, Python. If you've been using those for comparing and running statistical analysis in large data sets, chances are you have an easier way of transitioning to a modern data scientist role. Now, when it comes to AI platforms, it's kind of tricky because that is indeed so new, especially like machine learning, deep learning areas. Every organization has different weeds in it. That's why, again, I don't recommend judging it by just the title. I had clients who wanted a machine learning developer. And then I had clients who wanted a machine learning data scientist. And they both had different interpretations of what that role should be, how much you should be able to program, or if you need to program at all in any kind of language. So I just want to say, if you have bigger strength on the statistical analysis side, mathematical algorithms, not so much coding and programming, chances are it's more of a data analyst or data scientist role. If you know your way around automation, actually writing code, actually being proficient with some programming languages, potentially Python, because that seems to be the mainstream, then you might want to go towards that data engineer, data kind of developer kind of position.
So it's all about research. So really the best way is to find out
Yeah.
who's doing it and what are the skills needed.
Exactly.
Thank
And just
you.
to give you an example, like if I may mention some clients, like ATB has their own read, ATB Financials, what they call a data scientist. And they like to split exploratory data science, which is a little bit of a different thing than actually having a problem in place and finding a solution. Exploratory data scientists are kind of backwards. You have large data sets. Can you take a look at it? Can you optimize different points? How can we use this data to reduce cost, make more money, maybe generate an additional revenue stream? So even when they look at a data scientist portfolio, they would have a different idea and interpretation of what they call data scientists. So it really comes down to the fact what the industry is using those methodologies for. I have computer vision data scientists that are doing medical imaging algorithms and finding patterns to identify different kind of abnormal kind of data on the pictures of a MRI scan, for instance, right? So every little field will have their own idea of what you would perceive a data scientist, but the best is to actually look at what they require you to do on a day-to-day basis and see if you can do it instead of just seeing what the title is.
Wow. You used a lot of words I don't understand, but I thank you for that. Okay, so may I ask, what platforms do you all use to do your market rate or salary research? People say you have to come to a job with a salary expectation, but how do I figure that out in this day? Everything seems to change. Saba, do you have anything?
I have a few. So good.
There is Glassdoor, there is the Power BI that we recommend and we also use. And I would say also like the research and asking the people who are in the industry indeed helps a lot too. But I think the most one that I would recommend the candidates to look at was Glassdoor.
Glassdoor, okay.
I
have a few as well.
Okay. Each of my clients come to me with what they're paying. I don't take anybody out of the race based on compensation. So if they came to me and said, this role pays, this actually just happened. The role paid 100 and I think it was 150,000 a year. The candidate that was a perfect fit, his base was 190. I went back to my client and said he's at 190, and he got the job and he got the 190. So I think I never take someone out of the race based on comp. I always let my clients know, like, this is what it is, but it also depends. If you're currently working, you have a lot more negotiation power, right? If you're not, you don't have as much. I do think you need to know what your value is, but at the end of the day, what one industry might pay varies to the next industry. So even though you say I've had enough of oil and gas and I want to move over to manufacturing, and then you see what the rates are that they're paying, and it could be significantly less. There might not be room for negotiation. So it depends. I'll let my client know this is where they're at, and I'll also let them know whether or not there's any wiggle room on that on the candidate side.
Okay.
If I may also add a few additional details, there are a couple platforms out there, payscale.ca, Alice, imercer.org, and essentially, I think those who might be coming from an immigrant background, you had to go through that National Occupation Code research process where you had to find your job in the National Job Bank of Canada. It has a 5-digit NOC code, and with that NOC code, you can actually go on Stats Canada's website, enter the NOC code, and get pretty accurate federal and provincial level average, median, modus, and you name it, hourly rates as well as salaries. So these are really good platforms. I think Stats Canada is really actively measuring it. And I like imercer.org as well because they cover both US and Canada. And they literally go out and survey companies' compensation plans. That's how they make stats. So those are all really good ones. But, just from a recruitment agency protocol perspective, oftentimes when a client comes to us and says, I need a product manager, for instance, how much do you think I would need to pay to attract that talent with these skills? And then we start talking about salary bands, and then if it's an employment role, what's the full package looks like, because there's much more than just the base to it, right? And those are like really long-winded conversations. So when I contact my candidates, therefore, I always give them a full idea of what the total comp would look like instead of just the base, because oftentimes that's one of the first questions: any bonus, any equity, any kind of share options, whatever. So it's different than a contract, all in incorporated hourly rate. Can you do it for $80 an hour, right? So those are things that you need to research and build out your pricing, especially if you're a contractor per se, because you might charge a different amount for a 3-month or 6-month or a 12-month contract based on that duration of the term. And all these platforms I mentioned, I think, are pretty good. If you take average of these 5, then you should be covered to have some real market data.
Thank you.
Now, and I do build their own metrics as well. Yep. I'm sorry.
Okay, I was going to say, I do want.
Yeah. Based on placement volume, I think most of the agencies will have their own metrics. And that's another transparent conversation. We say, if I place someone on that team specifically, I say, this is where we made a deal happen before. So I'm giving them the range of what the expected rate is, what the manager's likely rate is, what the ideal rate is, what the lowest, what the highest is, and what's a stretch. So, knowing yourself, if you want to go in there, knowing that you might outprice yourself, I'm game for it, but you should know this is where the other candidates are at, right? So this is another benefit, maybe working with an agency, they will give you that lay of the land.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I think that's the benefit, because if you're going to put a candidate forward, you're going to also share what the salary scale would be, correct?
Exactly.
Correct.
Yeah. And we also have our salary guide. So that would also help employers to say that, what is this, like you say, Nandor, the product manager, like if a client comes in and says, what does it pay? So we have a salary guide that we share with them based on the years of experience and saying, this bracket pays this much and this bracket pays this much. And we're always having the wages or the salary that we discuss it with the candidate.
Right. Okay. Now to a different kind of question. Why do recruiters not share feedback with job candidates if they don't get the job? I don't know if I worded that properly, but if I don't get the position, could I not find out what I could do better, or maybe what I did that wasn't quite what you were looking for?
I think this
I
is
think
very
I understand your.
Yeah, this is very crucial. And this is where also our role comes in, where, if the client says we did not pick a specific candidate, this is where the feedback comes in, because it's constructive to us too, working with that specific candidate. So we provide that feedback and to know what have they missed or what they can work on moving forward. Not only to support the candidate, but also to support us in finding the better fit for them the next time. And I think this is a very important question. And that, again, one of the important things, that advantages of using an agency, because when I apply on Indeed and I go to an interview, I might not hear back, or I don't get feedback on my resume. But working with a recruitment firm, this is where that missing part comes in, and where the feedback will be provided.
Okay, so another benefit of working with a recruitment firm. So what are some of the trends? Oh, sorry.
I wanted to add and just say that the reason I wouldn't give feedback is because I didn't get feedback. So it wouldn't be from lack of trying with the client, but sometimes I'm so down in the weeds that I'm dealing with HR is dealing with the hiring manager. And so if I'm trying to get feedback from HR and they're trying to get it from the hiring manager, and the hiring manager has moved on to something else, I mean, so I keep trying to follow up with HR, they're not getting back. That would be a valid reason that I'm not getting back to somebody with actual feedback. I also am the person to say, I'm trying to get the feedback, but I'm not getting it. Um, but I know a lot of people, what they'll do is it seems like they're getting ghosted, and I don't think it's a I don't think people are intentionally getting ghosted. I think that everybody's waiting for some guy or girl to give them feedback or do something, and everybody's just sitting there waiting. So I think that could be the problem. I don't think any recruiter out there doesn't want to give feedback. I think we all want to give our candidates feedback as to why or why not they were chosen. But I think for me, what I see a lot of times is just not having that feedback to give.
Okay.
And may I add something to this as well? Just
Sure.
in terms of the process, I think it's a little bit on the candidates as well to ask about the timelines. And again, coming down to that process mindset, like, when do you anticipate to hear feedback? Can I follow up with you in a week from now? And if we don't hear back from a client within a week, may I assume that this role has been canceled, put on hold, maybe filled already, right? And for candidates to understand, like, it's really making a difference if an agency has direct access to that hire manager, or they have to go through HR, or they have to go through procurement, or they have to go through a vendor management system, right? So these are things that probably are not a visible thing for a candidate when they just submit their resume to a role. Because, when you order a hamburger, you just want to see the hamburger, right? But having said that, this is what I'm prepping my candidates for. If it's a VMS account, it's a highly competitive account, meaning that every agency will have 3 seats. They will send in their candidates. This is their deadline for submissions. This is their timeline for reviewing resumes. And if we don't hear back, it means within 2 weeks, they did a shortlist, but you didn't make the shortlist. Mm-hmm. So, there are certain ways you can set that expectation up. And I think that's the best way to do it. So, you don't have to make calls all the time and say, hey, did I make it? Did I make it? Right? And that kind of element is that frustration from candidate side as well, because they know, okay, maybe this is gone already. Believe me, if the role is revived and you made the shortlist, the recruiter will be on you just to set that meeting up, right? So that's definitely part of the process, and I think that's the best way to actually talk with candidates about their expectations.
Thank you for sharing that process, because I think that's important. I do have a question for Ahmed. What are the hot jobs now? Where are you finding there's demand? Across Canada, but specifically for our job seekers here in Alberta and Calgary.
So it depends on what season we're in. Right now, obviously, with tax season coming up, accounting's a big one. So we have a lot of accounting business coming in right now. What roles in general depends. Last year, obviously, since COVID, transportation supply chain is probably the busiest, along with manufacturing for non-durables and durables. So a lot of warehouses, distribution centers, transportation, courier services. IT is blowing up. IT, automation, STEM. They call it the overarching umbrella STEM. So IT, automation, STEM, very, very busy. Accounting right now for Q1 with tax season coming up, very, very busy for a lot of companies. And then on the industrial side, manufacturing and transportation supply chain are probably the biggest ones that we are seeing. Manpower releases a quarterly update, actually, that we've been releasing for 50 plus years. That kind of goes over what the hot industries are at the moment. And since COVID, manufacturing, transportation, IT have been the big 3. And then right now, just with tax season coming up, accounting is quite busy as well. I would say those are probably the biggest ones.
Thank you. And so should I expect to see you on television explaining the latest trends?
So the last one was in December. So I did a few news and media outlets in December. Next one will be in April, so probably March or April. I'll be doing more news outlets and whatnot, talking about those numbers, as well as our next talent shortage survey comes out. And last year's data will be very, very interesting. Because like I said earlier, based on 2019 data, 50%, 48% of Canadian employers had a hard time filling their open roles. A lot of factors go into why that is. Number one reason was lack of applicants with applicable skill sets. So that's why it's important for job seekers to understand what the in-demand skill sets, what the in-demand job markets are, and go from there. So it's important for us as recruiters and recruitment agencies to know what the market's saying. And that's why a lot of these things said earlier with pay rates and salaries. And there's obviously, data out there with Glassdoor and other pieces, but in our world of work, every day changes. The world of work changes every single day, where the market dictates what's going on with rates, salaries, job demands, everything. So in our world of work, every day changes. So it's important for us to be aware of the market, and as well as job seekers to be of the market as well. So always be in tune with what's going on with politics, with stock markets. These variables you don't think about all very much dictate what's going on in the everyday market, and those ultimately dictate what we do on a day-to-day basis. But yeah, that's kind of my long-winded answer.
That's why labor market information, which can be so boring, is so important. That informal information to find out what's happening. Thank you. I have one last question, and I'm going to apologize to the audience that we're not getting to all the questions, just due to the time constraint that we have. So the last question is, do you have any particular advice about doing job market research for a role? How do you do this research and learn the current state of the job market for certain roles? So you kind of touched on that, but is there any place in specific job seekers can go to find out more?
I can start off that answer. So yeah, data is everywhere. So obviously every month, looking at the stats report that Canada gives out, job report numbers are very, very important. And then obviously a bunch of recruitment agencies, government-funded agencies release these reports on a monthly basis. So Manpower, we release quarterly outlooks on who's hiring, what's hiring, verticals that are hiring. Every month we release job report data of what's going on in the market, unemployment rates, which areas are hiring. And we also release a lot of surveys that kind of go over who's not hiring, what the reason is behind it. How we get this research is very, very simple. We have relationships with obviously a lot of different companies and resources. Our MEOS, to give an example, our Manpower Employment Outlook Survey, we actually reach out to 2,000 employers in Canada from 10 different verticals and ask them a simple question: what are your hiring trends each quarter? We've been doing that for 50 plus years, and it's super, super accurate every single time. It's actually crazy, and different variables go into play. So last year, the last 2 surveys we released were in COVID, so that was very, very important. Like I said, Stats Canada and Government of Canada, Government of Alberta release tons of reports each month. And then we also have partnered, Manpower is partnered with the government of Alberta, and we created these workforce development programs in which we've asked companies, why are you struggling with filling these roles? What the in-demand skill sets are for those roles? How can we create a program to get people to get those tasks and duties? And lastly, with automation and tech taking so much in the last little bit and blowing up so much in the last few years, there's always that myth about how robots and automation is actually taking away jobs. We've proven through research over a longitudinal study of the last 5 years, robots, automation, and automations and whatnot do not remove jobs, they remove tasks. So that's why it's important for job seekers to understand that the more junior level tasks and duties are becoming eliminated because they've created automation and robotics and IT and whatnot to remove those. So it's important for job seekers to constantly upskill. We always say upskilling is the name of the game. Consistently upskill, keep upskilling, keep networking, keep making sure you're on top of everything that's coming out. in today's day and age, everything is moving so much quicker than it ever has, where we always say the ever-changing world of work. That's our slogan essentially right now, because every day is changing so rapidly and so quickly. But that is where we get all of our data. We release it monthly and quarterly, some annually, but the biggest thing is just making sure, get the data to the job seekers, and as well keep us informed and keep employers and job seekers informed, because that's how we're going to get ahead, especially with the economy the way it is. We want to make sure we're boosting the economy and going from there. So yeah, especially with COVID, there's still work out there, and I think that's the biggest thing I can say. Even with COVID and everything else going on, there still is work out there. So just understanding which industries have kind of seen a jump due to that, and how you can kind of get to where you want to get to as a job seeker.
Okay, anyone want to add last little piece before we?
Yeah,
Okay.
just in terms of technological trends, I think a few words from that side.
Yes.
What's hot and on demand? I kind of mentioned product management, people who understand product features, that product ownership kind of realm. How do you build a product, let it be mobile or web application product? That's becoming a mainstream trend these days. I have 4 open roles right now, actually. Automation was mentioned a lot. I feel like in the industry trend, you might hear the term development operations or site reliability engineering for platforms. Those are the most common automation kind of roles that come across our desk. We have 5 openings right now. And in terms of, application builders or the people who code those applications up, maybe your, taxation software that you plan on using for submitting your taxes. We have software developer roles in all kinds of wide varieties. And talking about soft skills, we have hands-on technical leadership roles for these software development teams as well, that require you to facilitate coordinated teams day-to-day work too. So, just in terms of trends, definitely IT is busy. And if you have a knack for that kind of automation, that could be something to explore.
Thank you. I just bought our grandkids a little robot that teaches them coding, because I think it'll be important in the future. So,
For sure.
Thank you so much, Nandor, Debbie, Ahmed, and also Saba, for sharing your knowledge, your time, your expertise with us. It's been very, very interesting for us. And hopefully you will get some new clients to see. Which leads me to the next piece, where I am going to thank our sponsors. The Government of Alberta, the Government of Canada. Without their support, this would not be possible. Talking about pivoting, we pivoted from face-to-face events to doing everything video conferencing. And I think that's an important thing to note, that our job seekers need to be able to say that they can in fact work using a variety of different platforms. And so also Together by Tribe, Brian, Dan, all of you out there who've made this possible with all of the little glitches. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I kept freezing and having to restart. But I thank you so much for your participation and certainly for your time. And I just want to say, Nandor, go and sleep. You've got a new baby. You're going to need your rest.
Thank you. Yeah, I know my eyes are just like.
Okay, go spell off your wife, or you go and have a nap. But congratulations and certainly good luck.
Thank you
with
very
that
much.
little future job seeker. Okay, so for the rest of you out there, I do want to let you know that next week on January 27th, we are having these wonderful recruiters have offered to meet with our job seekers. There will be a 5-minute session per participant. And after the 5 minutes, you will actually get cut off. And I'm sorry to say that, but that's how we're going to manage to get through the numbers. But there is a requirement to pre-book for this event. And as Chris apologized, so do I, because there's only a certain number of seats available. There is a link in your question and answer to book your recruiter appointment. And you click on that link and that is where you will get it. And it's talentpooljobfair.com. And you will be able to get in a spot, I hope. You have just a short time to sell your background to the recruiters to see if you can maybe set up a longer period of time in the future. But if you are a lucky one, I just want you to make sure that you have a short introduction ready that really highlights what it is that you have to offer. Write out your plan to get it organized. Take the time to practice. It's not that we want you to memorize, but we want you to make sure that your short time of 5 minutes, you really are speaking to what is most important, and that you're not going off on some tangent and say, oh, I wish I'd said that, or that is information I want to share. And one thing you can do is you can take that extra step and you can videotape yourself on your phone or that, and it will allow you to see if you have any little quirks. We do this in our interview skills workshops with the government where we videotape, and then you'd notice, oh, I touch my hair a lot, or I use my hands so much that it's distracting. So if you get a chance, videotape yourself doing your little introduction, and that will lead to success. And remember, an introduction is a conversation, but it's only the beginning of the conversation. And the best conversation ends when a listener says, tell me more, or let's meet again. So I want to leave that with you for a little tip to make your 5 minutes more successful. Then there is a reminder that on February 24th and March 24th, there's going to be 2 virtual job fairs coming up. Watch for information for registration on the Talent Pool's website or through their social media. Another opportunity to meet people virtually. And so once again, meeting people virtually might take different preparation than if you are meeting people face to face. So research that. And so thank you, everybody. Thank you, audience, for being with us. Participants, thank you for the questions. I apologize that we weren't able to get through all of them, but certainly meet up with people on LinkedIn. Remember, go to their profile, click on connect, and write them a short note and say this is where you met them and you want to continue the conversation. So thank you so much. Have a good day, and hopefully the rest of your day is great. So take care. Bye-bye.